In the same time, it allows environmental compliance, avoidance of penalties, and presents an opportunity for growth and prosperity, as well as energy independence. EU has introduced a vast number of regulations on air quality, emissions, and alternative fuel infrastructure. Timely compliance is always cheaper for a member state, and synergy ensures this. EU also offers an adequate number of incentives, and synergy aims to communicate this to the industry stakeholders. The use of natural gas is a totally new business sector for Cyprus. Thousands of new jobs, new specialties will be created. New companies will be established. As Synergy partners, we are here to record your needs. As a Synergy coordinator, I personally invite you to discuss your needs with us so that we can eventually develop a feasible and effective implementation plan for the transition of the internal market to the use of energy. In today's sessions, you will have the chance to see the action in more detail and discuss how the key players envisage your contribution and benefits from an efficient developed natural gas system in the region. Let me take this opportunity to state how well the group of industry experts in Synergy have been effectively synergizing with the Republic of Cyprus. Let me thank my partners for this, and last but not least, let me congratulate also Bankernet. Their role in this organization has been very vital. Thank you.
I would like to call Mr. Antonis Ioannou, Acting Director, Energy Service, Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism.
Distinguished guests, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you on behalf of the Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism to this second part of today's event that is dedicated to Synergy proposal. Allow me first to sincerely thank all of the organizers and of course warmly welcome to Cyprus all delegates who are joining us from abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, the energy policy of Cyprus is fully harmonized with the energy policy of the European Union. Its main axis involves the security of energy supply and the fulfillment of the energy demands of the country and the safeguarding of a healthy and competitive market. The Synergy proposal is considered to be a first step towards the realization of the energy goals of the Republic, especially the ones that relate to the diversification of its energy mix, the end of its energy isolation, and the introduction of natural gas both for electricity generation as well as for the use in transport. After the studies of Synergy are concluded, it is expected that the implementation of the project will commence. The construction of the LNG storage facility is considered as another step towards the realization of the rest of the energy infrastructures planned for the area. Dear all, the Republic of Cyprus is fully endorsing all projects of common interest that are related to the island and thus is giving to all projects the priority status projected under the relevant EU regulation. We believe that all PCIs and will contribute towards the realization of our goals. Thank you.
Okay, let me invite Mr. Sopinski to give a small keynote speech on behalf of DG Energy.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I have to admit, yes, I'm changing my hat now. While still representing the European Commission, I was asked by my colleagues from DG Energy to deliver a speech on their behalf. I'm sure that they all support mentally all the projects related to energy that are co-financed from the EU budget and that are currently under construction in Cyprus. But physically they could not be here today with us, and that's why again you have to bear with me also for the afternoon session. In the morning we have focused on the maritime dimension, and we talked about the SEF transport, and we took as a basis the Poseidon Med 2 project. This session is about the synergy, and I could say that, you know, having my maritime background, maritime transport in general and energy, these are very, very synergetic and closely interrelated topics. So SEF energy, SEF, Connecting Europe Facility budget dedicated to SEF, focuses in general both on electricity and natural gas sectors. Projects are supposed to contribute to the completion of the internal energy market, increased share of renewables, increased security of gas supply, enhance interconnections, and what's particularly applicable to Cyprus, remove the energy isolation of the EU member states. Currently, when we look at the sector globally from the Commission perspective and from the INEA, the agency that implements 93 energy-related projects across Europe, with the total funding of 1.6 billion euros, and the funding in Cyprus itself is at the level of 16 million euros. And there are two projects. The first one relates to the Euro-Asia interconnector, and the second consists of a number of studies with regard to the Eastern Mediterranean natural gas pipeline. Additionally, Cyprus is one out of 7 successful applicants in the context of the SEF synergy call. The project should help in developing natural gas penetration strategies in Cyprus and in setting out most optimal structure for the implementation of the LNG-based infrastructure investments in combination of transport and energy. The project is about optimization of upstream and downstream natural gas supply chain, and I have to say it attracted quite high co-financing rate, because if we look at all selected successful projects in the context of SEF synergy, this is in terms of magnitude and the volume number 3 project, being actually in the very top of 3 projects who had received a significant allocation. The total budget for the SEF synergy in Cyprus is 7 million. So I congratulate you on that on behalf of DG Energy and the European Commission. The SciEnergy project is truly on synergy because it links to the project of common interest concerning development of gas storage facility on the island of Cyprus. It also fits logically in the framework of another project that deal with the development of gas pipelines on the territory of Cyprus, linking with the LNG reception terminal, for which co-funding has also been approved under another instrument at EU level called European Energy Programme for Recovery. Now the clear message from DG Energy colleagues. They are strongly, as the Commission, we encourage the promoters of all those related and often interdependent projects to cooperate closely, to benefit from synergies, avoid unwanted risks such as delays, for instance. And we would like to see projects moving swiftly to construction phases so that natural gas, which is cleaner, could, without unnecessary delays, become a reliable source of energy, powering the island, but also the maritime traffic in the area. Thank you very much.
I would now like to ask Mr. Dr. Symeon Kassianidis, President of the National Gas Company of Cyprus, SciGas. Thank you.
Ξάκη. So I'm Simeon Kassianidis. I'm the chairman of DEFA, the Natural Gas Public Company of Cyprus, and otherwise known as SciGas. I know we have like 3 different names. It's hard for also us to keep track of it. I'm here to talk to you about where we are today and give you a status update as where we are, and also talk about the latest developments and the way forward and a bit of the history. All this trying to condense it in the next few minutes. So what about the current status? Cyprus remains an energy isolated market with high dependency on liquid fuels for power generation. There are 3 main conventional power plants with total capacity of about 1,500 megawatts. And there is a dual fuel capacity at Vasilikos power plant for about 830 megawatts. There is increasing penetration of renewable sources. There is a natural gas regulation under the RAEC, the ESERA, here in Cyprus. Our law is harmonized with the European directive. And finally, due to the isolation and emergent market characteristics of Cyprus, it's possible to have a monopolistic operation in the early years. What's happened up to now? We've had DEFA has had 3 failed previous attempts to introduce the gas to Cyprus. The target now is coming close. We have a target to provide the gas at the Vasilikos effectively power plant to be practical by 2020. And we feel that the lessons learned from all the previous trials that we have had have enabled us to find a way forward, and we are actually optimistic that we will be able to do that. So we have gone out and did extensive studies, all driven by the end date of the 2020, and seen what is feasible, economical, and possible. And the solution of the consulting effort and the studies that have been done specified an FSRU unit, which also ties in, let's say, with the future developments of hydrocarbons on the island. Through CEF synergy, which we are here, and we have, let's say, the synergy proposal is aligned with the natural gas supply target date of 2020. There are 15 partners, 2 ministries, 7 Cyprus, 7 partners, and 6 partners in Greece. All synergy resources are mobilized for the new CEF energy proposal for PCI Cyprus gas to EU and the timely completion. At this point, I would like to thank all consortium members and DEFA consultants for their hard work, dedication, and commitment to complete and finalize the CEF energy proposal package in a very tight time scale. I feel this is already a success story, showing how a common goal can successfully bring together private and public organizations. So what is next is that we are preparing 2 separate processes. There's been a lot of discussion in the media here as to why and where, and is Cyprus actually proceeding and so forth. We will hold 2 tender processes, one for the procurement of gas, and that will be announced in January, February 2018, and one for the infrastructure development, which will be announced in March, April 2018. If we look at the possible development of an 18-month window, it means that we would actually have to have a decision made for award before July, let's say, 2018. That is our target for the project. So this is what the new project looks like. It has been designed, it has been developed. There's a lot of detailed work behind that. All the various permits and authorities have now been secured. The package is ready also for the submission to the CEF Energy. You'll see there is a jetty. There is a parallel jetty to the, you see two jetties, one on the right. You can't see very clearly is the current VTTV, which is with the Vasilikos port. Our previous speakers discussed about the port, let's say, enlargement at Vasilikos. For DEFA, basically, there will be the jetty and the FSRU will berth, and then there's a pipeline, a buffer onshore, and that is the definition of the project for the supply of gas, the introduction of gas to Cyprus. Other work that we have is, and it was just mentioned about the onshore pipeline. That is a project that has is going in parallel. We had it's been in the pipeline and it's been worked recently. We have revised all studies, and that basically has looked. Let's say we have a new feasibility study which has looked at the gas supply and distribution, which aims to address power generation, industrial consumption, transportation, and eventually domestic and commercial needs. We see this is the forecast as it has come out. We see that basically by 2040, we have the beginning basically in 2020 is on the left of the curve, where it's the beginning of the introduction of gas. And then we see a very introduction and growth of consumption. This is based on expectation, analysis, and history for previous and other, let's say, locations. And what you see is we have transportation, commercial. It's too small, the letters, you can't see it. I can share the graph with anybody who's interested later. The pipeline has been, we have a phase one, as we call it, is the first phase, is basically to select the route. A route has been selected. It takes into consideration the 4 IPP licenses, independent power producers, which will open also the supply of gas, will open the electricity market in Cyprus. There were some statements this week about that. It's all interrelated because the licenses are for gas-powered power plants. So basically, the DEFA introducing gas to the island will open up the prospect for these works. In detail, my time has run out. That's very stressful, actually, having it there. the planning and the route has been selected. It has taken into consideration all, let's say, all factors: environmental, social, archaeological sites. We have already started discussing with the various departments. We have already started discussing with communities because of right-of-way issues and so forth. But it is disengaged from the actual arrival of gas on the island. So the project, let's call it the FSRU infrastructure and procurement of gas, is now independent of the project, let's say, with the pipeline. They're both running in parallel. But our main objective is to get, let's say, in very simple terms, gas to the power station at Vasilikos by 2020. We see for the pipeline, there has been a re-estimated. We have heard also from the previous speaker that we have secured the grant. DEFA has secured the grant of about 10 million euros several years ago. We now are looking how to make better or some use of it. The whole pipeline is estimated to about 75 million euro. It takes, as I said before, to go from Vasilikos to Moni and the Kelia, which is the main routes, and in the way also to take care of the independent power at the locations where the independents will be located. And last is closing, I guess. I mentioned. So the LNG procurement public tender will be announced January, February 2018. Already a lot of work has been done. Next week, we're actually issuing a tender for the financial, commercial, and legal consultants that are going to help us draft the documents. It's enough time. Let's not forget it's the third time we're doing it, actually the fourth time we're doing it, so there's a lot of knowledge about it. And then the infrastructure development will be announced in March, April. And it does have to do also with the decisions of the CEF Energy regarding our application. We will have an open season process early in 2018 for the determination of demand by all users and the committed quantities for natural gas and special allocation. And then basically that will determine the feed for the pipeline network, which will be announced after, let's say, the study is done following the open season. So with that, I think I am just a bit over, but thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Alexis Mikhail, Executive Manager, Generation and Supply Business Unit, Electricity Authority of Cyprus.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin my presentation by thanking firstly the organizers for the opportunity given to me to present EAC's position on this important subject. Energy is fundamental for the competitiveness of the Cyprus economy and the welfare of its people. Furthermore, Cyprus' dependence on imported liquid fuels, the challenges of climate change, but more importantly, the characteristics of the Cyprus small and isolated electricity system make it more challenging to develop the future electricity system on the island. A system that has to be designed along the guidelines of sustainability as defined by the European directives, that is competitiveness, environment, and security of supply. The above makes the presence and use of natural gas in the electricity system and of the near future both a challenge and a necessity. But first, a few words about Cyprus' electricity system. Conventional generation in Cyprus is currently carried out by the 3 power stations owned by the Electricity Authority of Cyprus on the south coast of the island. Vasilikos is the newest and most efficient power station. It contributes to around 64% of the total conventional generation requirements and comprises of 2 dual-fire combined cycle gas turbine units, 220 megawatts each, capable of burning natural gas and distillate oil. 3 steam units, 130 megawatt each, burning heavy fuel oil and scheduled to be converted for burning natural gas as well in the near future. And 1 38 megawatt open cycle gas turbine, which is fired on distillate oil and is also equipped with a black start capability. The second in size and age power station is the Kelia power station, located towards the east part of the island and contributes 5% of the total conventional generation requirements. It comprises of 6 by 60 megawatt steam units, all burning heavy fuel oil, and 2 by 50 megawatt sets of internal combustion engines, which are currently running on heavy fuel oil, but it's possible to be converted to burn natural gas as well. The oldest power station is Moni Power Station, which is adjacent and close by to Vasilikos Power Station. This station, all the steam units in this station have now been decommissioned, and in that area we only have 4 open cycle gas turbines, 35.5 megawatt each, which are used for peaking and emergency purposes. The share of renewable energy sources in the electricity generation is currently around 9.5%, with the main contributor being the wind energy. According to the National Action Plan for the Renewables, the minimum target by the year 2020 is set at 16% of the total electrical energy generated. Individual targets for the capacity from each renewable technology for 2020 have been set and will be updated at frequent intervals. As recently announced by the Ministry, additional capacities required by 2020 from each technology are wind parks, 17.5 megawatts, photovoltaics, 120, biomass, 5 megawatts, concentrated solar power, 50, and wave energy, 20, making a total of 212.5 megawatts. Currently, EAC is in the process of preparing its generation development plan for the period 2017 to 2036. Preliminary results of the study have already shown that the anticipated increase of electricity consumption must be covered by the installation of new combined cycle gas turbine units burning natural gas, alongside with new renewable installations, mainly photovoltaics, and battery storage systems. The relative share and penetration of each technology into the energy mix will depend on the natural gas price and the price development of the photovoltaic and battery systems. It is expected that the natural gas will play a very important role in the early years ahead, whilst gradually shifting to a supporting role for the renewables in the longer future. The development of the electricity system, along with other energy policy issues, such as the development of future interconnections of Cyprus to other countries, make the long-term supply contract an important issue for the successful introduction of natural gas. Flexibility is sought in the contract to cover the uncertainties of the natural gas consumption in our system, and this can be provided by the adoption of a contract to cover the basic quantities together with the spot market to cover for the remaining. Therefore, the duration, maximum annual quantities, and the embedded long-term flexibility of the contract are important issues of the natural gas supply agreement. Another important issue that has to be addressed by the natural gas supply contract agreement is the seasonality of the natural gas consumption. The annual delivery program of LNG to DEFA is expected to be a challenge, and even more so with parallel deliveries from the long-term contract and the spot market. Equally important to the long and medium term is the short-term flexibility. The storage and regasification system has to be designed so as to accommodate the needs and technical characteristics of the electricity system. It should be able to meet both the present and the future electricity system maximum and minimum natural gas requirements, but also the increasing and decreasing rates of the supply of natural gas in order to meet the various load ramping requirements during different times of the year or within the day. Reliability of the system and the necessary buffer to enable the units to switch to standby fuel supply are also critical parameters for the successful operation with natural gas. Now, as the President of Chairman has already mentioned, following a Cabinet of Ministers decision last summer, DEFA is expected to prepare and issue in the first quarter of 2018 an invitation for tenders for the long-term supply of LNG to Cyprus for the basic quantities, and furthermore, the best option available for the remaining quantities required will be examined. DEFA is also expected to prepare an invitation for tenders for the selection of a strategic investor for the construction and operation of the necessary infrastructure, which will include the FSRU, the mooring facilities, subsea pipeline to the Vasilikos station and storage buffer, either through a BOT arrangement, be assessed as eligible for project implementation and possible co-financing from the EU. This, as we've heard, is anticipated to happen sometime towards the end of the first quarter of 2018. The invitation will include a provision for EAC's participation of up to 30%. And I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate EAC's interest to participate in the necessary natural gas infrastructure in Cyprus. In parallel, EAC is currently in the process of preparing tender documents for the selection of technical, commercial, and legal consultants for the preparation and negotiation of the natural gas long-term supply agreement with DEFA. Further to the installation of gas turbines of Units 4 and 5 at Vasilikos Power Station, which have been designed, as I mentioned before, to run either on liquid fuel, being diesel, or natural gas, EAC is proceeding with the installation of the additional systems and equipment required for combustion on these particular units. In parallel, we are proceeding with the completion of natural gas conversion works on our steam units 1 and 2 at Vasilikos, as well as carrying out the whole modifications and installation of the additional equipment that is required on our third steam unit at Vasilikos again. Finally, EAC is working on the installation of the necessary infrastructure which will be required to receive and supply the natural gas at the right conditions to all our generating units. In parallel, we are taking steps towards securing the continued operation of all our units at Vasilikos beyond the 1st of January 2020, when the new environmental restrictions will come in force, just in case natural gas is delayed further and beyond that date. In conclusion, I would like to say that the successful introduction of natural gas in the Cyprus electricity system is both a challenge and a necessity. Dedication and close cooperation, as we've heard by other speakers before, is required by all stakeholders involved. EAC has in recent years been working intensively towards the above and will continue to do so in the coming years until natural gas becomes available for use in our generating units. Thank you.
Okay. I think we got very useful information about the future of natural gas in Cyprus. Mr. Kassianidis gave us a good roadmap of the next steps, and also we had the expression of interest by the Electricity Authority of Cyprus. So it thinks that the things are moving in the island, and very soon we will have something very good on the issue. So let's move now to the session. Fueling Cyprus Future, this is the title. We have 6 speakers, and let's start very fast with Professor Dimitris Lyridis, who is an associate professor in National Technical University of Athens, and he is acting as a technical coordination in our project. and he will give you some more information about our action.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a synergy project, and the first aspect of it is that the few sleeping hours in the island, because of the nice entertainment, as well as a nice lunch, have produced apparent results, and I would like the organizers to slow down this clock, because I feel a bit sleepy. Sorry about this. Well, let's start with the action, and I hope I go into a little bit more detail regarding the content of this action. The aim is to establish a holistic natural gas supply system in the island by taking as a focal point a floating LNG storage facility, possibly a floating storage and regasification unit, moored a little bit close to the Vasilico terminal. The aim is to optimize all aspects of it, upstream, midstream, and downstream of the natural gas facilities. That is, define the best available solution for the natural gas supply, trade, and distribution in Cyprus, explore possible complementary schemes with the natural gas supply, storage, trade, and distribution, allow most probably the development of a secondary compressed natural gas market, LNG market, utilizing small-scale LNG, and also a complementary compressed natural gas supply chain. Also, the aims is to explore possible consumption and distribution of natural gas for road, industrial, commercial, and other uses, including the maritime. And we have three aspects on this: the strategy, the actual legal and regulatory framework, as well as detailed implementation plans for this expansion. I will go a little bit into more detail regarding the technicalities of the project. And let me first introduce the consortium that comprises, as mentioned already, 2 Cypriot ministries, 7 partners from Cyprus, and 6 partners from Greece, and 1 from the UK. The National Technical University of Athens is a subcontractor to Hydrus Group, who has undertaken the technical coordination of the project, and as such I am here with you today. The major objectives, technical objectives of the project is the optimization of the upstream and midstream market rollout. That includes, as we said, the CNG, the secondary CNG market, the small-scale LNG, trading patterns, and optimum supply and distribution systems. A second objective, very important, is the design, the technical and operational design of and the exact location of the LNG storage facility, and including also the entire natural gas supply system. A third objective concerns the road transportation, and this is the transportation part of the project, the design, legislation, and implementation plan. A fourth aspect is the natural gas for commercial and industrial use, defining the strategy, the legal and regulatory framework, as well as the implementation plan. We will not forget the maritime strategy, legislation, implementation plan for the maritime use, that is the use of LNG as fuel for vessels. I think we have forgotten inland waterways. There are no such things in Cyprus, okay. And then financing, how we're going to finance this action, and therefore the events like this who aim at the public awareness and highlighting the benefits of the introduction of the natural gas in Cyprus. Synergy is a synergy project, and therefore it extends the impact of earlier actions like the Poseidon Med that you have heard about this morning, and the earlier Costa and Costa 2 projects that were motorways of the sea projects, as well as it builds upon the existing projects of common interest for Cyprus on energy. It extends their scope, and its added value is that it presents a holistic approach on the problem of transport and energy together, so as to build the equation of 1 + 1 makes more than 2. It covers the complete core and comprehensive networks in Cyprus, and it examines not only the use of liquefied natural gas, but natural gas in its entirety, that is also as a compressed natural gas and as a natural gas transmission system. But to say that this is the added value of synergy is an understatement. There are major benefits, outcomes, concrete outcomes from the action that can be grouped in 4 major categories, and these are economic, environmental, geopolitical, and technological innovations, aiming at making eventually Cyprus an energy hub in the southeastern Mediterranean Sea. In terms of the economic gains, these revolve around 2 major areas, micro and macroeconomic areas, synergies in the energy and transport sectors, a sustainable energy and transport system in Cyprus, promoting technical and commercial activities for the main patterns of LNG supply and trading, developing the supply chain for LNG and CNG, optimization of the upstream and downstream natural gas supply system in the entire island, allowing the Republic to have a control on the actual purchasing of natural gas, reduction thus of the external cost, building upon a basic natural gas trading scenario, but also taking into account the evolving spot LNG market. As we see in the recent years, we have seen the LNG contracts become smaller and smaller in periods. That means a spot market is really developing for LNG trading. And last but not least, increase the competitiveness in the island, allowing the generation of new employment, completely new sectors that involve natural gas, and in general reduce the energy costs. In terms of environmental impact, LNG being natural gas being a cleaner fuel, an alternative fuel both for the energy and the transport sector, the benefits are quite clear. It will achieve low carbon transport, low greenhouse emissions. It will allow compliance, as mentioned already, with European Union regulations and international policies, and it will decrease dependence of the island on traditional fuel oil sources. In terms of technological effects and aims, a high-quality technological solution for the acquisition and handling of natural gas will, and eventually also the design of an optimum LNG vessel specifically for the area conditions and trade will be major outcomes. Finally, the geopolitical impact is quite high, as the synergies between member states, partnering member states in this project, cross-border cooperation between Greece and Cyprus, and also other countries, so much neighboring, removal of bottlenecks and bridging missing links between Cyprus and South Europe, removing the isolation of the island, both in terms of energy and transport. This will transform the geopolitical potential of the island. Ladies and gentlemen, I will not tire you very much. This is, as I said, a synergy project. And contrary to international practices and my personal expectations, to the honor of the Republic, there has been a tremendous synergy between 2 different parts of public administration, 2 ministries, and also synergies between industrial partners and the ministries. This has allowed eventually the Republic to take hold of an opportunity that arose quite late, adjust its strategy, and gain profits from the available EU funding, essentially making a blitzkrieg on EU funding. This has demonstrated already its results with the proposals developed, being prepared now, and it gives essentially the opportunity to take into account of even more financing, allowing it to make a solution of these problems in a very profitable way. After all, natural gas, whether in industry or in transport, it is the same gas, and it can easily demonstrate that it allows the solution of the chicken and egg problem in transportation by seeking synergies with the energy sector. It allows the solution of an environmental problem in energy by seeking synergies with the transport problem, and it solves the general socioeconomic problem of Cyprus and its geopolitical problem by creating a virtual cycles where transport and energy create a much higher than expected outcome. I would like to thank you all very much for your attention, and I would like to wish that the next major event of this type takes place very close to the FSRU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for your kind words. Now we will move to the next speaker, Mr. Michalis Chrysafis, who is an Industrial Extension Officer, Hydrocarbon Service of the Ministry of Energy. With Mr. Chrysafis and all the officers of the Ministries of Energy and Transport, we have a wonderful collaboration, and I hope that this will continue in the future.
Hello everyone. I will speak today a few words about the projects of common interest and what does the Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism is doing to promote these projects of very strategic importance for both Europe and Cyprus, and what we do about the streamlining and the simplification of the permit granting and the involvement of all the stakeholders to this big project. So the projects of common interest is a list of European projects that under the regulation 374 of 2013, a union list containing cross-border energy projects is created every 2 years. The candidate projects of common interest are evaluated with respect to their benefits for security of supply, market integration, sustainability, and competition in the European Union. Current list contains 195 projects, and there is a new target for the European Union to have a 10% interconnection target for the European Union by 2020. We mean electricity interconnection target. It includes projects in the areas of electricity, gas, oil, carbon dioxide, smart grids, etc. This list, the PCI list, incorporates projects of European added value and importance that usually interconnect two member states on the basis of their importance of the development of trans-European energy networks, the known 10E, and the European electricity and gas networks. This PCI list is valid for 2 years until a new list is approved. Currently, there are some discussions on diplomatic and technical level to approve the next list. Why the PCIs are important for the EU energy security supply. The EU imports more than half of all the energy it consumes, and its import dependency is particularly high for crude oil. It's more than 90%, and natural gas around 66%. And the total import bill is more than 1 billion euros per day. Many countries are heavily reliant on a single supplier, including some that rely entirely on the Russian gas. This dependence leaves them vulnerable to supply disruptions, whether caused by political or commercial disputes or infrastructure failure. For instance, in 2009, gas dispute between Russia and transit country Ukraine left many EU countries with severe shortages. In response to these concerns, the European Commission released its energy security strategy in May 2014. This strategy aims to ensure a stable and an abundant supply of energy for European citizens and the economy. For these projects of common interest, there is a political decision of the 4th of February of 2011 that, according to that European Council decision, no EU member state should be isolated from the European gas and electricity networks after 2015 or see its energy security jeopardized by lack of appropriate connections. These are the three main projects that involve Cyprus, which are the Eurasia Interconnector, a cable connecting Israel with Cyprus, Crete, and Greece, mainland Greece. EastMed Pipeline, the cross-border gas pipeline connecting Cyprus and Greece, which is a cluster of projects with the Cyprus gas to EU, which is the FSRU option already discussed. This is the photo of the projects. Mr. Kassianidis spoke in detail for the new FSRU project. So the benefits of the projects of common interest are three sets of benefits. The one is the accelerated permit granting. The other one is the improved regulatory treatment, and the most important one is the financial support. When we say accelerated permit granting, there is a target for all EU member states that they should achieve to give and conclude the permit granting of all projects of common interest within 3.5 years. The current practice now is that the average duration of permit granting for this project is around 6 to 7 years minimum. There are some member states that have 13 years of permit granting. So the effort is to combine the permits or merge them and involve all the stakeholders to this process of simplification of the legislation. For this purpose, the Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism is building a one-stop shop, and also it improves the regulatory framework with incentives and with the creation of a cost allocation study for the FSRU. All the projects of common interest have also access to the Connecting Europe facility for funding. This is the three layers of the swift implementation of the projects of common interest. First, there is the regulatory incentives, then there is the cross-border cost allocation study that shows the benefits for each involved member states. It's minimum 2 member states for each PCI, and then there are the financial instruments and the support by the Connecting Europe facility. So we first rely on the market, and if the investments are not made by the market, regulatory solutions should be explored. And when the first 2 steps are not sufficient to deliver the necessary investments in PCIs, the Union financial assistance could be granted. There is also the European Fund for Strategic Investment, which is the new a new European fund. It has more than 200 billion euros per year indicative budget. The National Competent Authority, which is the Ministry of Energy, Commerce, Industry and Tourism, in collaboration with other stakeholders, has prepared a list of legislative measures and non-legislative measures to simplify and accelerate the permit granting for the PCIs. I will proceed later or some examples. The project promoter of each PCI, within 3 months of the acceptance of the notification to the member states, should give its own action plan of how the stakeholders will be involved in this discussion for the legislative framework and the permit granting. And the National Competent Authority shall approve within 1 month this action plan. And the NCI in Cyprus decided that instead of having various action plans by each PCI promoter, we decided that it's better to create a national public consultation plan for PCIs in collaboration with all the PCI promoters that will include the public actions by the Cyprus Gas to You projects and all the other PCIs. So we built a one-stop shop for energy PCIs in order to enhance the stakeholders' communications and consultations. This one-stop shop includes the internal procedures for the Energy Investors Hub, a call center, and an interactive website, an electronic platform that will be available for everyone. Initially, it will be available in English and Greek versions, and later we'll have specific material in other languages. For example, some material will be available in Hebrew for the Euro-Asia Interconnector. Also, PCI promoter for the Cyprus Gas to You builds a specific website for the project. The content of the interactive website will be customized to the concerns and needs of each stakeholder group according to the provisions and suggestions of the 10E regulations and other EU acquis and international guidelines. The website is this, one-stop shop for energy, pcis.gov.cy. I just mentioned a few things that it will be included, latest news, PR, description of projects, the permit granting procedures, the time schedules for the construction and the operation of the project, scientific content, innovation material, stakeholder surveys and content, legal framework, funding opportunities, formation of funds, etc. And this one-stop shop website will provide information that have synergies with projects in the transport and the gas sectors. For example, the internal gas network by DEFA. And later it will be connected with the national in-government solution, and it will allow online payments and online PCI approvals. We use best practices for public acceptance of PCIs from countries that already implemented projects of common interest in order to minimize bureaucracy and other barriers for the permit granting. We have created a list of assessed public acceptance measures for PCIs, so to achieve that the maximum period for the permit granting of each PCI is 3.5 years. For the projects of the FSRU, the aim is to shrink at the half of the 3.5 years in order to make it possible to implement this project by 2020. So we will be the only member state that will shrink so much the permit granting procedures. The stakeholders for the public consultation we have involved in the public discussion are the public sector departments and services, the energy market stakeholders like the regulators, the TSOs, the IPPs, the energy services, financial institutions and banks, either local and international banks, local communities, citizens and stakeholders, environmental associations, commercial and trade stakeholders, technical chambers, maritime stakeholders, labor stakeholders, consumer associations, and other. Some examples of legislative and non-legislative measures that are already prepared by the National Competent Authority are manual of procedures, public training for the public officers, environmental regulations, labor legislation, staff mobility within the government and between EU and the member state, new procedures for the emerging gas market, public procurement, service contracts, and also energy diplomacy relations. For example, we have trilateral agreements between Israel, Cyprus and Greece, or MOUs with the involved countries, and the cross-border collaborations with other EU member states and third countries includes, of course, collaboration between the ministries and the governmental departments, new policies, views on the studies of the CPA and the CBCA studies, assessment of the investment opportunities, assessment of the cross-border environmental impacts between, for example, Greece and Cyprus, and the alignment of the two national manual of procedures of Greece and Cyprus, and exchange of how these policies and legislations are monitored by an audit mechanism. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, the next speaker will be Dr. Stelios Bikos, Head of Commercial Division from the Public Gas Corporation of Greece. Mr. Bikos will be talking about the potential collaboration patterns between Greece and Cyprus on the issues of gas supply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon from me. My presentation, I hope, will be less than 7 minutes allocated, short and sweet. Just to rest you assured that DEPA, the gas incumbent in Greece, is here to exploit and to push for the synergies that have been talked about and to help optimize, as has been said within the project, the development of gas in this country. Now, I happen for my sins to be involved in the commercial division of DEPA. That means I need to sell to make money. And the role in synergy, I guess, is to help DEFA also make money by selling gas. A grand task. Can I have the next slide, please? Here it is. Okay. Let me just bring out very few areas where there is a pronounced synergy between Greece and Cyprus in terms of gas. The first is that both countries have a comparable demand in terms of LNG every year. In Greece, LNG is only something like 15 to 20% in the annual balance. In Cyprus, it's going to be almost 100%. However, the sizes, in terms of LNG, are equal or thereabouts. That means that if, in some magical way, the two countries were to combine procurement of gas, then the buying power of Greece would double, and the buying power of Cyprus would also double. And that brings them in a very good position in this region. Just to say that in this region, the biggest buyer of LNG happens to be Turkey, and followed by Egypt. And there ain't that many sources of LNG as yet. Egypt struggling still to make amends of the old situation with Gas Venosa. I'm sorry, I'm not editing well. Yes, okay. Within the procurement and logistics area of LNG, another synergy is coming from the very size of the FSRU. The vessel that is likely to come to Cyprus will have a capacity of approximately Revithousa. Revithousa being the, as you know, the LNG terminal in Greece. We have experienced with Revithousa the constraint of having a storage tank, or storage tanks rather, of total capacity almost equal or thereabouts to the conventional size vessels in this world. That means that if anybody wanted to have a decent price for LNG, they would go for a conventional size cargo, and in order for that one to fit within the storage space, one would either have to go for part cargo or go for part load, part unload rather, or a capability which Revithousa unfortunately doesn't have, to receive reload cargoes from a nearby terminal. Now, with Cyprus in 2020 or by 2020, this third possibility will be able to be offered by Revithousa, thereby increasing the flexibility and covering situations which, in which good price can be combined with security supply. Sorry, it's just, okay, there it goes. Now, following on to security supply itself, you know that Revithousa has been expanded, and it's been expanded from 130 cubic meters of LNG to 225. That will be next year. So by 2020, when the FSRU will be here in Cyprus, Revithousa will be slightly larger. However, we still foresee operationally that there may be instances of really prompt need in Greece for a bridging quantity of LNG that is a smaller than usual cargo of LNG until the arrival of a scheduled cargo. That happens usually if there is a spike in demand, either because of bad weather or because of the fall of lignite or some other form of energy, whereby LNG is consumed unforeseeably fast. So such quantities could well be provided by Cyprus at that time, if Cyprus happens to be in a temporary slack of demand, and it has a safe stock and therefore can spare a bit of juice for Greece. The same can happen the other way around. So if Cyprus finds itself short of LNG because there is a similar kind of bad weather spell or a cargo delay or whatever, then again Revithousa could supply Cyprus with a smaller amount of LNG. But that would only be able to happen if one had a vessel that could actually shuttle between the two terminals in a short length of time. It's less than a day, in fact, and could cover that. So there is a proposal here that there may be worth exploring the possibility. Okay, it says here a sort of jointly purchased and chartered vessel. What it actually means is that either or both of them together, or a third party contracting with both of them should have a vessel of, say, 20 or 30,000 cubic meters of LNG available for those two players to play with. Following on from security of supply to the inland situation, it's just to say that the gas market in Cyprus will, at least initially, unless that is, or until there are connections with other places, be in isolation. It has been spoken about today. That is actually not far off the situation of the Greek market. The Greek market has two pipe connections with other countries, but really, so far they've been unidimensional, so one-directional rather, and for operational purposes, for all intents and purposes, it is an isolated market. That brings it, therefore, on a par to the Cypriot market coming on. The gas consumption in this island, on this island, will very much be similar to the Greek situation, dominated by power production. And the gas, as a source of power, will face competition from renewable sources, which have been factored in, as I understand, in the strategic planning of the state, which is again similar to our situation. And finally, the market size, even smaller than Greece's, will pose severe challenges where it comes to application of the EU acquis, of the EU regulation, which will have to be implemented, yet will be done at the same time as the network will be developing, the usage will be developing, and therefore one will have to abide by competition law, by all the segregation and the unbundling that the EU wants, while nobody will be secure for demand. For these reasons, we find that the challenges that Cyprus is likely to face in the next few years, and especially from 2020 on, are very, very similar to what Greece has faced over the last 20 years. Therefore, we see the game in two ways. One is that Cyprus has no gas heritage, and therefore may start its market from an advanced form that is very close to what the EU wants of a market, of a gas market. And there Greece can help with its insight from the past and can help Cyprus to avoid pitfalls that it has fallen in. And the other side is that mature market structures, with hubs and exchanges and so on, may not quite be directly applicable to Cyprus because of its size and because of its perhaps, I shouldn't say lack, but challenge in terms of diversity of demand, but may offer a kind of a guideline. It may offer a good broad framework for it. Just to let you know that you will not be alone. Greece is right now exploring similar structures, and by the time gas comes to Cyprus, we hope that we will have some experience in that to share. So, in conclusion, we heard earlier from Dr. Lyridis that Cyprus could develop into an Eastern Mediterranean gas hub, it was said. I've narrowed down a bit. It could perhaps see itself pretty much like a small Singapore, perhaps becoming part of an Eastern Mediterranean LNG trading hub. Because Cyprus has a good track record in trading. It's financially standing a lot better than a lot of its neighbors. How to trade, it knows how to do trade, and it knows very well the maritime world. So in this respect, one could see an opportunity in the FSRU, providing Cyprus the excuse of a politically stable situation, place whereby LNG can be traded for the Eastern Mediterranean region, and can therefore give flesh to the dreams of the EU of promoting such forms of trade in this region of the world. In this course, Greece, DEPA, could help work up such a plan, could contribute, and help through the commonality between the energy sector in this country and the marine LNG. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much. I've exceeded my time. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doctor, because it was indeed a very, very interesting presentation. And that makes me to say that I'm really glad that we have DEPA in the consortium of Synergy, and this will give us a lot of valuable experience from DEPA activities in Greece. So let's move forward to Mr. Apostolos Tsirakis from Tsakos Gas Partner. He's head of corporate strategy. Apostolos.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Republic for having taken the decision to move on with the infrastructure related to the LNG terminal. It's not by coincidence that today the IMO celebrates the World Maritime Day. And the theme, as launched by the Secretary General, is connecting ship, ports, and people. So I think it's very, very appropriate that this event happens today. I will go very quickly. I will just give you a brief overview of the Tsakos Group. As you know, the Tsakos Group has been around for almost half a century. It started by Tsakos Shipping and Trading and has evolved to the Tsakos Group of companies. The group gradually adjusted the technologies used and moved into the 21st century by expanding its investment base and creating Tsakos Energy Navigation Limited, which is the company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, led by Mr. Nicholas Tsakos. The group's presence and the range of activities cover a lot of geographical areas and a lot of activities and a lot of different sectors. I would like to emphasize on our strategic relationship with Columbia Ship Management, a company based in Cyprus, and thank you, our friends, for being here today. Moving forward, the company has a global presence from the Far East to the South America, all the way to London, of course, Montevideo, and Singapore. Currently, the fleet profile of the company consists of 92 tankers, not 91 as it says here, 92 vessels, that is. 74 tankers, 2 LNG vessels, container ships, dry cargo ships, tug vessels as well. Our LNG vessels consist of 2 units. We have built both of those units ourselves. One was built in 2007, it's a 150,000 cubic meter unit, and the second one is a 174,000 cubic meter LNG carrier, latest technology, tri-fuel diesel engine, and this is our pride and joy. And the group's intention is to move even further into this. The group has been involved on FSU projects through the first 2007 built vessel, and our second vessel is currently employed with a US major LNG exporter. Moving forward to the Synergy action, Tsakos Gas Partners Limited is the actual vehicle that we are using for all gas-related projects. The company has been involved in FSRU and LNG terminal projects in West Africa, East Africa, and Asia so far. And the purpose of this presentation is to complement the Synergy's presentation and the decision to go ahead with the FSRU option. So we will look into why an FSRU. Here what you can see is basically the diagram showing the flow of gas from the production transportation into the LNG storage facility, and of course from the storage facility into bunkering, as discussed earlier during the day, tracking facilities that will distribute further into the market, and of course other gasification units and pipelines that will go into the country's network. So the options really, once the gas arrives at the destination, is to offload into an LNG storage facility, either an onshore or an offshore. Breaking down this, we see that the vessels arrive, and obviously they will have to unload onto the onshore or the offshore facility, regas, and either put into the pipeline or further load into tracking or other bunkering barges. The FSRU solution is something that's been around for a while. It's not a new concept. FSRUs are based on LNG tankers, and essentially they use the same technology as onshore terminals. However, the difference is that all the regasification equipment is either constructed with a ship in case of a new build, or is retrofitted on board in case of a conversion, and specifically designed to be suitable for shipyard construction and marine operations. The regasification, the floating storage and regasification units started almost 16 years ago in 2001, when El Paso contracted with Accelerate Energy to build the first FSRU for the Gulf Getaway project. The first FSRU unit per se went into service in 2005. Today there are 26 FSRU vessels, of which 23 operating as floating terminals and 3 as LNG tankers. Another 10 are in construction as we speak. And there are options with shipyards, mainly in the Far East, for another 10 units as well. In 2015, out of the 7 new terminals contracted, 4 were FSRUs, and 6 of the 9 under construction projects are floating concepts, showing that the ratio of onshore to offshore terminal will continue to shift. At the end of 2017, the total floating import capacities worldwide stood at 83 million tons per annum. A total of 100 have been proposed for startup between now and 2020. If all of those 109 terminals materialize, they will add 305 million tons of regasification capacity. Of course, most of it happens in Asia. Industry reports estimate that another 58 FSRUs at various stages of development are currently discussed and will be in operation by 2025, bringing the total capacity of imports close to 200 million tons per annum, or 60% of world's LNG production back in 2016. So why FSRU? Lower cost, faster schedule, commercial flexibility, reusable asset features are what differentiate FSRU to land-based terminals. FSRUs can be relocated, and where it can be accounted where onshore terminals, the cost for onshore terminals is accounted as unrecoverable cost, meaning sunk cost. A typical new build, 174,000 cubic meter FSRU, would cost around $240 to $300 million, depending on specifications, compared to $1 billion plus for a similar size conventional onshore terminal. The recent trend has been to construct new build vessels of around 170,000 cubic meters capacity and a 600 to 750 million cubic feet per day send out rate. As mentioned by the previous speakers, an FSRU takes less time, so we need 2 to 3 years maximum to build a brand new FSRU, compared to 3 to 5 years for the onshore terminal. Consequently, and this is where the big difference comes into play, is that FSRU can deliver first gas much quicker and improve the cash flow and the project economics. FSRUs offer the same full processing capability as land-based terminals. including the boil-off gas management facilities using recondensers. Just to give you an example, on the latest LNG vessels, the boil-off ratio is 0.08% of the cargo, where 5, 7, or 10 years ago, the same could be anything up to 1%. And that is cargo lost. And this is a very substantial figure for cargo owners. An advantage of the FSRUs, of course, is the permitting issues are much easier. Onshore terminals do face a lot of problems. No one wants to deal with not in my backyard effect problems that come with environmental issues. And of course, the construction of FSRUs in a shipyard minimizes the impact of local construction activities, such as large movement of civil engineer materials, large equipment, and all the disruption that frequently create in the local community. I don't know if you can read this. This is probably an eyesight test. It's just showing more or less what we were just discussing. The FSRUs allow for quicker fuel switching. I heard earlier one of the previous speakers saying that the FSRU, depending on the demand of the market, can accordingly operate at a lower rate. And this is something that, yes, FSRU can do. Additional capacity, if required in the future, can be done by adding another FSRU unit if needed. If the storage of more than 170,000 cubic meters is needed, an FSU unit can be complementing the facility. Strategic storage is something that FSRU provides on the same way on-land facilities do provide by adding more units. Of course, where there's no existing harbor, it goes without saying that FSRU is the optimum solution. However, here we do have in this project a harbor, and we do have the facilities that will be in place. And of course, other advantages is the fast-track need for gas markets. So, as I mentioned earlier, it will be much quicker for the first gas to hit the market. And the financing or the lack of capital restrictions that an onshore terminal can have. I mean, the lower capex right away gives FSRU an advantage. The capital cost related to an FSRU represent typically about 60% of what an onshore terminal would be. It can be delivered in a shorter time. An onshore 3 million tons per annum terminal with about 180,000 cubic meters of storage is likely to cost 800 to 900 million, maybe over $1 billion, depending on local construction labor costs, compared to 400 or 500 of an FSRU with all the other equipment that is needed and all the jetties and other facilities. Project schedule, the time to construct an onshore terminal could be 36 to 40 months, and the new build FSRUs nowadays typically take 27 to 36 months. These are figures, of course, that can be improved depending on who's placing the order. So really the cost of an FSRU can be broken down to the FSRU vessel. Are we talking about a new build? Are we talking about a conversion? The infrastructure, inshore or offshore, in this particular case, a jetty structure for mooring the vessel is what is more appropriate. The transfer of LNG from the supply tanker and the piping system necessary to connect to the gas network. And the owner costs. The owner cost is the project team involved, all the technical and commercial aspects, the contractors, consultants needed for all the period until final investment decision, FID. I think I'm running out of time. The schedule for an FSRU project can be broken down into these three parameters. Have to do with the preliminary discussions. This cover all the initial discussions, negotiations between the various stakeholders, gas customers, LNG supplier, the FSRU provider, the local authorities, including the harbor authority, and the project financing. the permitting and pre-engineering to achieve project approval to FIT. It covers all the preparation of the contracts between the stakeholders, the development of the concept, specifying the precise project location and obtaining all the necessary permits, and the construction, the time to obtain the FSRU vessel, construct the infrastructure, i.e. the jetty and the interconnecting gas pipeline. As mentioned earlier, these two activities are independent and can run in parallel. So I would like to conclude the presentation by thanking again the organizers for putting this together, and looking forward to see you in the next meeting once everything will have been decided and everything will have taken its implementation schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Apostle, for this important information about the FSRU markets. So, let's move forward to Mr. Sophocles Papanikolaou, the CEO of FCN Energy Logistics. And I believe that Sophocles will be talking about the penetration of natural gas in the internal market.
Thank you, Bano. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us. It is indeed a great pleasure to be part of such an important initiative for the Republic of Cyprus. A couple of words about our company. You probably have not heard of us. That's because we were founded about a year ago. FCN Energy Logistics, or FCN Gas, which is our trade name, is part of a shipping company, actually. Our mother company is called Franco Compania Naviera. It's a traditional shipping company based in Athens, Greece, with an experience spanning more than 6 decades in shipping. The aim of our business was to move a little bit downstream and to develop end-to-end small-scale natural gas supply chains. And the way we aim to do this is by identifying users or potential users of gas and designing and developing the suitable supply chains for servicing them. One thing that we need to mention about our company is that I think we're in a good place to be doing that because we have the benefit of approaching the land and sea elements of these supply chains with equal interest and equal confidence. Now we are leaders of activity number 4, which is the infiltration of natural gas in industrial and commercial sectors. Within the context of synergy, we will be addressing the strategic, commercial, and regulatory aspects of natural gas use in these sectors. And what we aim to do in collaboration with our partners is to assess user-specific needs, identify constraints, review best practices from other countries where natural gas supply chains are more developed, like Spain, Portugal, France, Norway, etc., and evaluate these supply chains for users in Cyprus and hopefully facilitating their implementation. Some key figures. I apologize if some of that has been presented before. I'll be very quick. Regarding energy users, excluding obviously power and aviation, the vast majority is road. Then industry and the commercial sector is about 15% each, and the rest is mainly residential. And regarding the fuel mix, again, with the exception of a small but growing sliver of renewables, the vast majority is currently liquid fuels, as in heavy fuel oil, gas oil, diesel, LPG. A couple of projections. Across industry, residential and commercial sectors, energy demand is expected to increase. Heating and electricity demand drive the increase among the industrial and commercial sectors, while cooling is the main driver for the residential sector. And now breaking this down and taking a deep dive in the industrial sector by sector, really, by industry, we see that cement overwhelms basically the consumption, and again, that excludes power. Cement is actually 60%, so we decided to remove it from this calculation for these purposes only, to get some perspective. And what's obvious here is that the food and beverage sector is the highest consumer, followed by non-metallic minerals and water. Overlaying the number of units on the total consumption, it seems that with the exception of water, which is one company, there's a pretty consistent correlation of total energy pool and number of companies, which is expected, but it also shows that instead of having some really big sectors driving or some really big units driving a lot of energy, what seems to be the case is a more segmented situation with many small to medium-sized consumers, which is important to note because it has obviously implications on the types of natural gas supply chains that will have to be developed. And talking about supply chains, there are three options really today. One of them is a pipeline, which we're all familiar with. The other two are what we call virtual pipelines, which are effectively a collection of moving stock going back and forth and allowing non-intermittent supply of gas to users. And one of them is compressed natural gas, which includes compression stations, trailers carrying tubes and decompressors on the other end, or LNG, which have again LNG trailers or LNG trucks unloading in permanent LNG tanks on the other end, or potentially sometimes modular solutions like LNG containers being taken back and forth. Now we aim to analyze the pros and cons and the constraints of each of these options, resulting of course in assessing the suitability of each depending on the type of consumer that we will have in mind. A couple of closing thoughts in the interest of sticking within time. We'd like to work towards identifying who and where the users that can most benefit from natural gas are located, whether certain technology advances, especially in microgeneration, such as combined heat power, trigeneration, etc., can enhance the benefits that natural gas can bring to those consumers, whether these users are served by permanent or virtual pipelines, as I previously described, whether smaller users are located in positions whereby they could be pooled to create demand centers that can be serviced by small-scale supply chains, and potentially maybe looking at whether there are users located in certain geographies that can be pooled to create mini-grids that are not part of the main grid but still serviced via modular options. I think that's all that I have to say. Thanks very much, and we look forward to providing even more information next time around. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sophocles. Now our last speaker is Mr. Panagiotis Mitru, who, although he's a partner in Synergy, he's with us as a guest to present the synergy between the Synergy project and the Element project. So, Panagiotis.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Panagiotis. I think you've said it all. So, practically, we are here to show a picture, a snapshot of the future, and a great synergy that could be there as a reality between Element, a project on electrification, and Synergy. And the fact that practically Synergy, with its vital addition of LNG in the electricity mixture of Cyprus, will practically offer safety and reliability in order to have what we call the fuel of the future, the green solution, which will be sustainable and will be electricity. So, talking about electromobility, we all know that there is a huge decarbonization challenge ahead, and LNG, as discussed today, is the first step towards the solution. So, we need to build the abundance of electricity today based on LNG in order to give time for more technologies and perhaps renewables to gain more share in the electricity market. And of course, at the same time, we talked today about the new combined cycle gas turbines that are going to be used for the production of electricity. We are talking about a new kind of technology that will be much greener for the local pollution aspects. and will minimize the impact to the island inhabitants. So what we're practically trying to offer, we're practically to set up on the basis of new technology and the use of electricity, practically the penetration, the entrance of electricity in the transportation sector. We are trying to have an impact, a positive impact on public health through the use of minimization of transportation emissions, have some growth through new jobs and new sectors, of course have a positive impact on the environment, and also add to mobility through electromobility and the fact that we will, what Europe sees as a future and what we also have seen in Greece, that we will have the chance to a greater mobility in the future thanks to this kind of technologies and thanks to electricity as a use. And of course, our project covers also Cyprus. We are going to have a relevant study for the Vasiliko terminal and Terminal 2 of Limassol. And practically, this is the first Cohesion Fund project in motorways of the seas for the area. So, as we said earlier today, there is no competition between alternative fuels. We have all a joint future, and practically we're talking about blending. Today, the necessary step to the future is LNG. We must take it. Then, with more stringent policies and more with additional environmental requirements, we will have to shift to even more sustainable solutions. But today, LNG can be the basis for abundance of electricity and the shift to electrical infrastructure. So talking about electromobility, this FSRU, this synergy solution could be the answer to the electricity problem of Cyprus and the isolation, the energy isolation of the island. We could have competitive prices quite soon, and this could lead to further investment in other sectors like renewables or what we heard today about battery and energy storage. And this could also offer more solutions in terms of grids approach and practically mobility that could be used for land transportation but also marine transportation. And this is what the element is all about. But we must think of this as an offer that comes from the future, and we will all need to really invest on. And we need to keep in mind that the island, Cyprus, does not offer very big distances, large distances, so electromobility could be perhaps the best solution for its future. So what we see as a circle of synergy, transport stakeholders should work closely together with the energy providers. We have the chance through synergy to sit on the same table and also come into contact with the local communities and consultation in order to provide the best mixture of infrastructure that will enable us to move forward. And in order to achieve that, we must raise awareness, as we do today, but to a greater extent, we must talk about green solutions that will have no precedent in our energy structure. We need to see electrical infrastructure as a key to port and land transportation development. We need to take into account electricity infrastructure when we design, we develop a port master plan today. We need to explore synergies like the one we do today with synergy element. And of course, it's better to plan well and try to start the investment today so as to have a smoother transition towards decarbonization. And this is something we must keep on. So thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Panos. And also I noticed that you kept the time, so that's very good. So, before we move to the panel discussion, I would like to ask you, the audience, if there is any questions for our presenters. Yes, please. Can you please identify yourself and...
But maybe there is more possibility. I mean, you can have in large tourist infrastructure, you can have cogeneration. I mean, a large hotel can use natural gas directly for HVAC or for cogeneration within treatment facility, so on and so forth. Agriculture. Is this being taken into account, and is this foreseen as part of any national program? Very much.
Thank you. That's a really good question. It is being taken into account. As I said in the very last slide, we are intending to explore the potential of technology advances, especially with regards to cogeneration, trigeneration, that would benefit such users. However, with regards to the distribution of gas to achieve such purposes, this would be a discussion that would happen within the context of Synergy, of course, with SciGas, who have their plan and their idea on how this system will develop. But the alternatives will be explored, analyzed, and the conclusions will be drawn.
Okay, if there is no other question, we can go to the panel discussion. So I would like, gentlemen, can you please let your seat so that the panelists will come on the so I would like to call Mr. George Dimitriou, Vice President for Services, Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to join us. Mr. Thanos Koliopoulos from Lorridge Register, he's Global Special Project Manager. Dr. Ioannis Koliousis, Project Manager of Precision Dynamics. Adonis Boutatis, Technical Director of Rogan Associates, and Andreas Petaliotis, Officer of DEFA Company. So, gentlemen, practically we have only 5 minutes, but let's see how fast we can do this. Mr. Dimitriou, we heard that DEFA has a concrete timeline. The public electricity company is ready to join in. The members of Synergy are here to develop an implementation plan for the penetration of natural gas in the internal market. We would like to hear what is your voice on this issue, because you represent practically part of the industry of Cyprus, and you are the potential clients, let's say, of this attempt.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's very welcome that finally detailed proposals are being put in place for bringing natural gas into the life of Cyprus, for the use of businesses, for the production of electricity, and for the use of consumers eventually. It's very encouraging that we are finally in the final round of this process, which has been going on for some time. The Chamber of Industry is in full support of introducing natural gas in the energy mix of Cyprus. we believe that both electricity generation, transport, industry, in which a lot of our members are participating and who suffered substantial increases in electricity prices when after the destruction of the power station in 2011. The hotel industry are potential users of natural gas, and we hope to have an alternative source of energy, cheaper electricity and cheaper fuel, together with all the environmental benefits that previous speakers have spoken. That will also create opportunities for Cypriot businesses to participate in this process and for people to obtain employment. And I believe that there would be substantial benefits. Now, this is a very long process, you understand, and just to make a note that in the European Commission's report on Cyprus' accession to the EU in 1998, it said there is no natural gas consumption in Cyprus, but its introduction in the country's economy is continuously under study. So during that process we've seen a lot of effort, but a lot of disappointment at the same time. So it's very encouraging to see that this process may be finally coming to a conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. Now I would like to give the word to Mr. Andreas Pedaliotis from DEFA, because as Mr. Dimitriou said, there has been a lot of disappointment to the industry, to the public, regarding this issue of natural gas and internal market. So how you are going to exploit the results of synergy so that you attract these end users to shift to natural gas?
So, Panagiotis, thank you. We should state that actually Synergy is helping Cygas and the Republic of Cyprus in general to put in fast-forward mode the implementation plan for the natural gas market development. As you know, all of the activities are covering, it's a holistic approach of how the natural gas market will be formed and operate. And our aim is to cover through some of these activities the potential demand by either the small sectors. We've analyzed and we've been through the demand for the big consumer that is estimated to be the Electricity Authority of Cyprus initially for the power generation. And Synergy will cater for this, since we have activities that are specific in analyzing the demand of such projects, as we've seen from our fellow from FCN. And together with other external consultants that we had and the studies we've completed for the pipeline network, we'll have the clear picture and the correct approach of how to proceed this time, accounting for mistakes of the past.
Okay, that's clear, I think. So we have the location, we have the project, we have the type of infrastructure, we have some of the characteristics as stated by Cygas and the President. Now I would like to address one question to Mr. Koliopoulos and Mr. Boutatis, who are responsible for the technical preparation of this, let's say, technical solution, and also the environmental assessment of this infrastructure. What can we say to the Cypriot citizen about the environmental concerns and also the safety aspects of this infrastructure?
Okay, thank you, Panagiotis. Actually, we received the same question during the public consultation by the representative of the local communities. The question was one: how safe is this activity? The answer is very simple. It's pretty safe. I mean, we take in consideration during our design all the features, and we were extremely conservative about the design. For example, the seismic acceleration in Cyprus is 0.25. We were considered 0.5, 2 times more. The wind that we consider for the velocity, for the pressure, for the forces in the mooring dolphins was 60 knots. It's a huge velocity. I mean, it's a huge power to the forces to the mooring dolphins. We are talking about forces of 900 tons. So the answer is pretty safe. Of course, Thanos can say more about the special and the safety features that the FSRU has.
All right, okay. One simple word. We've chosen the best possible technology for maturity and safety. This is not something new. 24 FSRUs are operating safely today, globally, the best safety record possible. They deliver every day. And by the way, I personally came and presented FSRUs in the Cyprus government 2006. So by this time that we're actually looking to be a reality of this project today, I think we are sure, we are extremely confident, the market is ready, the safety studies have been concluded with literally fantastic results, and the design is such to ensure continuation of the service. So it's not something revolutionary that we're actually doing. To remind you of the amount of gas that, again, Cyprus require, FSRU is the best solution to create a market. We don't have a gas market currently in Cyprus. So it's time to be realistic and to stop thinking about LNG terminals, to stop thinking about pipeline connecting without having a market. The FSRU will create that market, which currently it's only 200 million cubic feet a day. Literally, very, very little. But it will create the process because it's financially viable. Nothing else is financially viable. To go back to the maturity and the time of design, this is an extremely also important thing to understand. We put an FSRU in 2014 in South America, and that took from actually this construction of the jetty to the first gas 17 months. You can achieve this if you go chartering a vessel. We actually have the time not even to consider chartering, and that's an issue for DEPA and obviously the Cyprus government to consider, but even to look at conversion or even new construction. So there are the available time here. The issue that we always are extremely careful is to actually represent the understanding of the Cyprus government to the society and to the public and the population, the near population of Cyprus. And the Cyprus government had two important issues: environment and safety. So the design from day one carried forward these two important messages. So I haven't actually heard people asking questions, so I could answer to them today. Why is a jetty? Why the jetty is quite long and in deep water? Why I have a supporting safe haven next to that jetty which is only 10 minutes? All these are issues that they are strictly related to zero impact to the environment and to the protection of the activities of the population and the public in the area. And by the way, when we're talking of Vasilikos area, I was a little bit surprised when actually I heard the Cyprus government have so much concern, because we're talking for a brown area. And if you think of other ports like Rotterdam, if you think of other facilities like Yokohama, if you think, a lot of other places where they have combined so many terminals, the concern for the environment sometimes is a lot less than we have here in Cyprus. But I can assure you 100%, this is what this design represents. So we can go literally straight forward and advise the Cyprus government that this design has to be financed. It's about the right time. It's about the right time for me. I might not make it to Cyprus again, to offer it for a third time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like also to stress the last words of Mr. Koliosis. It's about the right time, so let's do it. So since we don't have a lot of time to continue this process, I would like to move on to the next part, which is the closing speech, which will be addressed by Mr. Nicolas Arugirou, the General Manager from Bankia.
Good afternoon. It's been a long day, and so I can confidently say that today's dissemination has firmly achieved the goal to inform industry stakeholders of the regional relevance of Synergy and Poseidon Med 2 projects in facilitating to achieve a cleaner energy mix for the Eastern Mediterranean. Projects like Synergy and Poseidon Med 2, strategically co-funded by the European Union, act as a frontline catalyst to realize tangible solutions that address industry concerns. Participating in this dissemination has shone a new light on the solutions available and how the future environmental solutions and concerns can be satisfied. At this point, it's really important that I thank the people that have made today's dissemination possible. Stella for the great coordination. The Poseidon Med 2 Dissemination and Awareness Working Group for their input. Special thanks to Naya of Hellenic Lloyds, Ilia Fili of Ocean Finance for the valuable assistance, Konstantinos Sofronis for his great artwork, and most importantly, the incredibly knowledgeable experts, most of whom who have flown in and sat on these panels and made these presentations. It's very much appreciated that you are here. Our expert speakers have today discussed and debated many facets, including LNG take-up, the actual use of LNG, regulatory issues, sourcing, storage, finance, distribution issues, and finally spoke about fueling the future of Cyprus, and hopefully, finally, we can finish with this story and get the LNG here. A broad range of issues that are critical for adoption. I'd like to thank the delegates who joined today. We are certain that via today's platform we have managed to communicate our vision for a strong, sustainable, clean LNG network in the Eastern Mediterranean that will service industry, transport, and households. I'm encouraged that we have a strong team of ambassadors that will support this important initiative, both locally and internationally, at all levels. So I'll be bold in stating that clearly it's not an issue of if, but when, and that LNG will hopefully be the future of choice for Cyprus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There is coffee and cocktail and a few canapes for the closing of the conference. Thank you all.